right. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the world's most exciting classroom. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. We have a lot to catch up on. So all summer long, we have been doing shorter versions of the world's most exciting classroom. So 30-minute events where we caught up with the Oosterschelde and learned about where they are in the world. We had a few guest speakers join us. We had Darwin leaders join us to share their projects. And then we'd usually have a curiosity of the week as well. So we left out Kahoot quizzes, we left out experiments, we left out the normal number of guest speakers we normally do because so many students in North America, South America, Europe, and Africa were off for the summer. But we are back now. We are going back into full-on 1 hour world's most exciting classroom events. So buckle up. We have a lot to cover. So the first thing I want to share is we need to catch up on where the Oosterschelde is right now. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's go nice and full here. So for those who might be new to the journey, we left Plymouth in August of last year. And since then, we have sailed across the Atlantic Ocean to Brazil and South America. We have followed nice and tightly along the coast, made our way through around the Falklands, all the way up the coast again. And then around the summer, May and June, we spent time in the Galapagos before we made our way to Rapa Nui, also known as Easter Island. And that's about when we lost our classrooms. So since then, you can see, if I turn the map, there is a lot of blue. The Pacific Ocean is absolutely massive. It pretty much fills the space here. And that is what we have been doing over the summer. So from Rapa Nui, we went to Mangareva, started making our way through Tahiti. From there, we went to the Cook Islands, Tonga, and now the Oosterschelde, if I zoom in nice and close here, has just started to enter the island chain here of Fiji. So over the next week, they'll be visiting some of these islands, hopefully getting into the water, hopefully doing some more coral transects. Grant, who we're going to meet in one of our videos, is going to do some more bird surveys, both from the ship and on land. So there's a lot happening here, and this is where we are in the world right now. We have made it to Fiji. If we back up a little bit, you can see not too long from now, we will make our way to New Zealand, Australia, and we're going to have some fun events when we get to that part of the world. So I'm going to come back from that screen share, and we're going to get going with our first guest speaker. So I'm so excited to have Maria Bollerup joining us today. She is a professional diver, which is really, really cool to be able to say you're a professional diver. She's an instructor, a cave diver. She's very passionate about our ocean, and she's also a member of the Explorers Club. And so on each leg, there's 32 legs of the journey. We have a different Explorers Club researcher come on board. They might be doing plastic surveys. They might be looking at the birds. They might be looking at eDNA, looking at sharks, all kinds of different projects. But we had Maria join us to look at the coral and do coral transects in Mangareva, in Fakarava, and in Papeete. So let's get Maria in here right now with us. Hey, Maria, how are you?
Hello there. I'm very good, thank you. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this amazing leg 18 of the DARWIN200 project that I got to join.
Excellent. Well, Maria, tell us where you're joining us from today.
I am joining you from Copenhagen. I'm sitting at the home office. I'm preparing to leave for an expedition in 3 weeks' time. So currently I'm staying very much behind the computer to prepare for that. But also I'm spending time in the office to group the information that we gathered in French Polynesia doing leg 18.
All right, excellent. Well, your upcoming expedition through Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, we will catch up with you hopefully a few times. And so we'll share some of that with the classroom communities. And then maybe when you're finished that expedition, we'll have you back in another world's most exciting classroom, because we like to bring the whole world in here live with us. So it'll be great to have you again.
That would be an absolute pleasure to do that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, I'm going to queue up your presentation. You have so much cool video content, great pictures. I've already had a nice sneak peek at your time on leg 18, but let's give the classrooms a little bit as well.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, first of all, just a little bit of context. I am a professional diver. I'm also a cave explorer and an ocean activist, in the sense that I use my time as a professional diver through the last 20 years to start gathering data for scientists. So you can call it citizen science, which you probably have heard about in classroom already. There's a lot of power that you can do if you are an enthusiast and has skills within a field. And for me, I got to go and measure up the corals in French Polynesia. So that's what I'm gonna talk you through now. Should I just do my full screen, Joe, to have it sliding?
Yeah, it's nice and full screen here already, Maria, so you should be able to just click right through.
Perfect. Well, I joined in Mangareva, which is absolutely at the outskirts of French Polynesia. And I was told that we would have the opportunity to go diving underneath the pearl farms out there. But there's no dive sensors out there. So in this first picture, you see me very excited on the first morning where we had success with having one of the local pearl farmers swing by with 2 tanks. You can see them lying in the floor in the background. It's just easier to measure up the corals when you can breathe underwater and you don't have to hold your breath every time you dive down, though we had to do both. So 6 a.m. in the morning, we have tanks, and Tom, who you know very well by now, for those of you who've been following along the journey so far, him and I got the opportunity to kind of just walk into pearl farms and talk to the locals about the work that they do out on the ocean. And this guy here, this was Thomas. He was one of the owners of a pearl farm. Actually, his family was owning the pearl farms in this particular bay. So we asked him, hey, Thomas, can we go and dive underneath your pearl farm to see how the corals were doing? And he said, yeah, sure. When do you want to go? Because he was very interested also in knowing what is the status of the coral reef and how does it look from somebody's side who knows about the reef. So he never dived there. So Tom and I were very excited and very ready. Tom, though, had to eat on the way out there because he had been in a cave with Jot, the insect specialist, who were on the leg just before that on the DARWIN200. So we fed him on the way out to the pearl farm, and then we kitted up. I must say, diving on a pearl farm is a thing I would never think I could do because it's private property. But so gearing up, we were very excited. And you see the tank I have on my back. It is the largest tank I have ever dived with. It was very, very heavy. And also the water was super cold. But this is how it looks like. Isn't that amazing? And one of the first thing I noticed is that round coral you see underneath my belly to the right. I've never seen this coral before. And I was super curious because they were everywhere. There was this one coral and then one more type of coral that was dominating the place. And afterwards, later on the trip, I learned that this coral move. So they walk around and they kind of decide where they want to make the reef. We have a video from there. Maybe you wanna share it so you can see how it looks with movement. Yeah. So these nets that are hanging down on lines, they're made out of plastic. And the process of the the pearl farming is actually 1 year for one pearl. And each of these shells you see inside has one pearl. It just looks so strange underwater seeing them hanging like that. But before they can hang in those big nets, they are grown in on these little, you can see some of the boxes here, in smaller oysters. So first you have this little egg that's released into the water column, and then they collect the eggs on little plastic grids. And then from there, the eggs are developing into these tiny little oysters, and then they grow in these boxes you see in the front. And then afterwards, they get put into the flat nets that you have in the background. So the whole process actually takes up quite a lot of time, but also quite a lot of material. This is underneath or just in front of a pearl farm. This was the day after we came back on kayaks. It was the weekend, so the pearl farmers were not working, and we managed to spend time inside the pearl farm because it was raining, so we needed some shelter. But imagine people going to work, driving a bus or delivering the mail out here in the middle of the Pacific Ocean People get up in the morning and they go to work on a pearl farm, and you have these little surgeons, they call them, that sits on these chair, and then they place tiny little pearls inside the oysters. This is how an oyster looks inside, and of course there's a fleshy bit, and wherever they place this pearl, it's actually a clam, so it's another shell that has been carved into a pearl. Wherever they place it inside this oyster, that's going to determine the color of the pearl. Now, that's a fact I thought was really cool. In this area, they have quite cold water, and they make very dark pearls out here. So I never knew about pearls before then. But what I was quite surprised to see is the state of the coral reef, how amazing it was looking out there. And later on, we learned that a healthy coral reef means healthy pearl farming as well. So this is an industry that actually works really well together and benefits for the health and care. But as with many areas on the planet today, the plastic use was actually quite a big problem, because they put this plastic into the water and then out of this in the sun, working with the oysters, back in the water, back and forth again and again, the plastic starts breaking up into microplastics. And I'm sure some of you have already heard about microplastics and what that does to the ocean and to the fish and organisms that feeds on it. So when Tom and I left from Mangareva, we were quite distressed because we thought, all of this plastic, you see, this is just from one farm, and there are so many farms out there. What happens to it? Does it get dumped in the ocean? Does it get burned on the beaches? So when we left, we had a little bit of dread. But we actually later on learned that French Polynesia and the government in Tahiti is doing big moves to collect these plastics and have them reused. So they are actually seeing the lights out there and working towards a better future. So that gave us a lot of hope, both for the coral reef, but also for the pearl farmers, because this is what they can live from out there. Leaving Mangareva, though, we were on the ship. And for you who have been following the Oosterschelde, you've seen that there can be quite some waves out there. Now, I'm a professional diver, and I have been on boats all my life. But sitting on the Oosterschelde in the Pacific Ocean, I had never thought how seasick someone like me could be. I thought I was gonna jump overboard and just drown myself, because it was so rough, or not even rough, it was just constantly waving. So I must admit, the first couple of days was hard work, but then once the ship started moving with me, not against me, I absolutely loved it. And there were so many cool people on board. It took us 6 days to arrive at Fakarava. And at Fakarava, we continued our coral transects. In a minute, I'll show you a video of how it looks like with the coral transects. But you can see here, from those round plate corals, we have a completely different type of coral here. So there's something going on the islands and in between what species are more popular in the colder Mangareva Islands, and then up here in Fakarava. Maybe you want to play the video of the coral transect, then I can explain what goes on there, Joe. Yeah, so what you see here is such a healthy coral reef. And how we do a transect is we put out a measuring tape of 20 meters. And then first I film along that measuring tape, showing what is the status of the corals around it. And then to give an overall picture. And then afterwards, I film on top of it, so you can measure up the coral sizes with the measuring tape. And once we've done the filming transect, we take a square and we place it over the measuring tape to do pictures. Afterwards, any scientist can come back, or citizen scientists can come back and do a comparison on how the reef looked then and how it looks now. Now, what you see here is super interesting. This is baby coral. So on this reef, they had a storm 7 months ago. And we always hear that corals take thousands of years to grow back, but they actually come back in just a matter of months. If the environment is healthy, and it is out here because you're so far from any pollutants and every big rivers or fertilizers from farming. You just have pristine coral reef, and when you have pristine coral reef, you have all the little fish that lives on it as well. So it starts with the little slugs and snails, and then you got the bigger fish that are feeding on the slugs and snails in the reef, and then comes in this guy in the background, the sharks. Look how happy I am. I was so excited to see them. The sharks actually mean that the reef is healthy because they eat the bigger fish. But to have bigger fish, you need smaller fish. And to have smaller fish, you need a healthy coral reef that they can feed on. So making this coral transit work on this healthy coral reef was actually a challenge because Tom and I were so excited to be around these majestic gray reef sharks. Underneath the belly of this shark, you might see that there's a fish, a very flat fish lying on the belly of it. Now that's a remora, or a sucking fish. He kind of just sticks his head on top or on the shark, and he sucks himself in with vacuum, and then he travels around in the ocean with them. Beautiful. Thank you, Joe. Now, needless to say, from that experience, I was very, very happy, and so was Tom. It was absolutely incredible. But this was up in the shallow parts of the reef. We were also very fortunate to go out in the channel, and I have a video from the channel that I too want to share with you, if you may. And sorry about my English sometimes, but I am from Denmark, and when I get excited, my English kind of disappears a little bit. And if I could have been speaking during this dive, I would have no English because I was so excited. First of all, you see this coral reef again, different types of species, different types of corals. This is a beautiful, beautiful cod. This guy actually changed color. So when they start hunting, they become completely black. I think we're going to transit in from this amazing. Oh, these are butterfly fish. You can actually hear when they start doing little mating rituals. They will say like little pigeons. Notice how you have, a trumpet fish. So on a coral reef, you have always fish that lives in different levels. So you see the little smaller ones very down by the reef, and then you see them getting further and further away from the corals. You see up in the left side, you have a sweet lip. That's a parrotfish. A parrotfish has a beak, and he used this beak to eat the coral. You'll see he'll take a chunk out of the coral in a second. You can hear him when he does it underwater. It's like a quonk. This is a Napoleon wrasse. He doesn't look too big, but I tell you, he is enormous, and he's got such great color. And look at all the fish in the background. We dove down on this reef, and still you have them in the background from this beautiful Napoleon fish. They were everywhere. So having this guy in front of you and you see the shark in the background, you don't know what to look for or do with yourself. It's just so amazing. Now, the big brown fish you see in the back, that's called a big eye. And that's me kind of just completely engulfed in fish. The interesting thing about the fish out here is, and the sharks too, they were not scared of us at all. Because they're not being fished, they just kind of comes right up in your face going, "Hey, who are you?" Now that's me inside that kind of train line of Fusilier fish. Look at that. When you are in here, constantly that school of Fusilier fish, the silverfish, was constantly just opening up with new sharks emerging. We're about at 30 meters of depth in this channel. Now, some of you might sit there going, "Ooh, sharks, are they dangerous?" But I tell you, they could not care less about us. Now, this fish is called a squirrel fish. I gather it might be the red color. Thank you so much, Joe, for sharing this video. That was a beautiful experience. You're right. So from Fakarava and that perfect pristine coral reef, we went on to Moorea. And I had very high expectations about Moorea, a beautiful island, very different from Fakarava, which was very flat and sandy. We came to this island that looked like something out of Jurassic Park, if you remember that movie with the dinosaurs. Underwater, though, we saw something we hadn't seen before. We saw this strange kind of algae. Looks like this. You see these? They look like little pom-poms. They were very hard and very sturdy. Now, this is actually the transect square I was talking about. We put that on top of the measuring tape and take a picture for every meter. And then later on, we can come back and see if the corals were growing or if they are dead or if they're the same. But here we saw these strange algae, and I learned that it's called a tubinia algae. But let me show you the comparison of the reef at 10 meters and then at 5 meters. So if you share the first movie of that, Joe. So this is at 10 meters of depth. And you can see the colors here are very different. There's not many types of coral. They've had an issue here with the starfish. It's called crown of thorn, and they come up from the deep and then they eat all of the coral. And the dive center owners and the divers there, they were very, very upset about this crown of thorn. But what they were more upset on was this weird algae I was showing you just before starting to grow everywhere on top of it. If you play the next movie, you can see the difference from this reef at 10 meters and then just a little bit further up at 5 meters of depth. I'm going to turn the camera in a second. There we go. See all of these soft tubinia corals or algae, not coral. So underneath them, the coral reef is gray and colorless and dead. And then you have all of this algae. So Tom and I, when we came out, we were like, whoa, what's going on here? This looks really, really bad. But what I noticed is there's still the intact chain of fish, of marine life. You still have sharks, not as many as out in Fakarava, but that's also extraordinary. You still have the slugs, you still have the snails, you still have all the little crabs and what have you. So the reef is fully alive, but the corals are gone and now taken over by this tubinia. And speaking with the dive centers, they were like, yeah, we think it's really bad. And they thought that they could see it in bigger concentrations around areas with runoff from the pineapple farms because they use fertilizers. So they thought maybe it's to do with the water and the cleanliness of the water. We went on to Tahiti to continue the coral transects, and this is at 5 meters in Tahiti. And you see here, there's now again different types of corals. It looks much more healthy, but you can also spot this strange tubinia algae. This was actually a really cool transect dive. You can see down in the left bottom of the corner of the screen, you have this fish upside down. We have a video of this. That's a trumpet fish, and it was pregnant. So if you want to play that video, Joe. Yeah. So trumpet fish, you see how fat it is on the belly? That's full of babies. This is very, very rare. She was huge, just hanging there in the water, waiting to pop. Now, finally, on Tahiti, we saw a lot of amazing coral. We also saw a difference between this algae growing in different areas of the islands. But I think what came back to us again and again was this whale song. So 2 more videos to show, and one of them is us in the water with the whales singing, if you don't mind. If you listen closely, Yeah. Thank you, Joe. So we never got to see them. We just heard them throughout our dives. And it was quite incredible because we did a night dive as well. And on that night dive, we could hear them still singing. I think we're running a little bit low on time. So I'll skip the night dive video for you and just kind of summarize what we learned out there, because Tom and I had a couple of weeks traveling through French Polynesia, looking at um, the reef status, taking pictures and filming it and making all these questions. Why are there more of this type of coral in this bay than that? What does this algae do? Why do we see more sharks here and not there? We had so many questions, and we were fortunate enough that when we ended the journey, we met this guy. This is Vitea Litao. He's got a foundation called Children of the Lagoon. He's a marine biologist. He's been working with pearl farmers for years, all the way out in Mangareva, where we started. And now he's studying a coral project, or he has a coral project, where he has realized that you can time a date after when the corals are spawning. So corals have to release eggs to format, or to what's the English word for that? Make more corals. So he had realized that this is clockwork. This happens at the same time within just minutes or hours, depending on where you are in French Polynesia, huge area. And he's using that knowledge now to protect the coral reefs out there. So we could ask him the questions that we had. And my first question was about all of this plastic from the pearl farms. And he's like, yeah, we're working really hard on it, trying to find new ways of making the pearl materials, or the pearl farm materials. So transitioning from brittle plastic and over to maybe bamboos. So they're really working hard for it, and that made our hearts at ease. But with this Turbinia algae that we had seen everywhere and were very, very upset about, he was like, no, we don't necessarily think it is so bad. Yes, it's changing, but like you saw yourself, the food chain is intact. The reef is thriving. So maybe it's not the vibrant types of hard coral and soft coral, it's something else. But the life is still there and it's thriving on it. So, with the changes we have on this planet, he said, we should be happy that in this area, the nature is resilient and it's finding ways to survive. And we can do what we do and make mistakes as human race. And then we try and correct it and become wiser. But he said, the nature is a fighter. And what you see here, I believe, is nature just progressing and becoming more and more healthy. So that gave us so much hope and so much joy, and just so many more questions that we would like to dig into, because he agreed with me around these plate corals. I noticed that they were in one lagoon but not in the next lagoon. So what was different between the lagoons, and are they good or not for the reef? And I think it just opened up more projects and a reason to go back to this incredible part of the world where the ocean is really healthy and thriving and doing well.
All right.
That's it. That was our trip.
Yeah, a pretty good trip, visiting some pristine parts of the ocean, also seeing some parts where human impact was happening. So you really got a full picture of what's going on out there in the South Pacific.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Maria, let's start taking some questions, but we're going to play some Kahoot as well. So while you were presenting, I pulled together a little Kahoot quiz in the background. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to put the Kahoot up. There we go. So for those who might be new to Kahoot, you need to go to kahoot.it. So that's the website address, kahoot.it. And then there's a PIN number, 722424. So if you have technology at your seat, maybe a tablet or a Chromebook, you can join that way. If not, maybe your teacher can pop this up at the front of the room. You can shout out your answers to him or her. And as groups join us, I'm going to take a couple questions from our live classrooms as well while we wait a couple minutes. So I know we're getting ready to go in, but I'll check in with some of our live classrooms and see if they have a question for us as our students are joining us. So we've got Mrs. Foster's crew hanging out with us today. How are you doing, Mrs. Foster's crew?
We're good.
Excellent. Do you have a question for Maria while we wait for the Kahoot to load?
What made you want to be a diver?
Oof. I've always been fascinated with water and the weightlessness. You know, when you go into a pool and you can just let yourself float in the water, I love this feeling. So that's actually what got me into it. But then I saw all the marine life and then I fell in love.
What educational background do you need to become a diver?
None. I was 15 years old and all I had to be able to do is swim 200 meters and then I had to float for 10 minutes. And to be honest, I never got an education. I just continued diving and then I loved it so much that I started businesses as well. So it just shows that if you're really passionate, really dedicated, you can become whatever you want.
All right, I'm going to bring the Phoenix School in now to let them slip in a question or two before we start the Kahoot. It's slowing down, so I think we're almost ready. All right, Phoenix School, if you want to unmute that mic for us, we'll grab a question.
My name is Jay and I'm in 6th grade, and my question was, in the video that you showed, the sharks were just swimming with the fish, and I wondered why they weren't eating the fish.
Excellent question. So it's the shark's home and it's the fish home, and sometimes they just hang out together, and actually it's quite hard for a shark to catch a fish when they are in a school like that, when there's so many together. And they do it on purpose. They are sneaky, these fish. They swim together in this school because for the shark, it's harder to pinpoint one fish and catch him. So I think at this moment, they were just hanging out. But once the sharks start feeding, you will see it and you can feel it in the water as well. They move a little bit different.
All right, and then Miss Skaggs' class, we'll let you sneak in one before we start the Kahoot. If you've got one handy there, let's get unmuted and we'll take your question. Oh, maybe they're not ready. Mrs. Skaggs' class, right? There we go.
Yes, we have a question right here. They
Go for
asking
it.
me how long she has been studying the coral reef.
Good question. I think ever since I started diving, when I was in the warmer waters, because I'm from Denmark, so we don't have corals up here. We do have soft corals, but it's different. But whenever I started as a dive instructor, I had to explain to my students what they saw, because when you understand what you're looking at, then you become more passionate about it. So I dedicated myself to understanding what was on the reef, and then very fast you realize when is the reef healthy and when is it not. And then it just developed from there on and got me this opportunity with DARWIN200.
All right, great questions to start us off. Let us get our Kahoot going here. So, quicker you put in your answer, and if it's right, the more points you're going to get. And then I will ask for the teacher with the winning student to message me so we can send a gift card to their classrooms. So which spot did Maria not visit on leg 18? Was it Fakarava? Was it Tonga, Papeete, or Mangareva? So which of those 4 spots, one of them doesn't belong there. Maria did not visit it on leg 18. You've got about 10 seconds to get that answer locked in. And then we'll take a look at our leaderboard. We'll see who is in that top spot. All right. It was Tonga. The ship was just there a few days ago, and it made the transition to Fiji pretty quickly. So they're going to have a nice chunk of time to explore some of the islands around Fiji. So I know that the crew and the passengers are going to love that. Royal Yak is in first place. Let's go to our next question. It's some true and false action. It takes 1 year to grow 1 pearl. Is that true or is that false? So it takes about 1 year to grow one pearl inside one of those. Got a couple more seconds. All right, good stuff, crew. That is true. It takes some time. It's not just an overnight process to get one of those pearls. Dr. Eagle taking the lead in our next question. Another true and false. There's only one color that pearls come in. So I think we've probably all seen white pearls like this necklace, for example. So there's only one color pearls come in. Is that true or is that false? Got about 9 seconds to lock in your answer. All right, we learned that's false. And Maria, I think you said depending on where they place that little piece of clam shell, it can affect the color. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Can I quickly show you on my screen?
Yeah, let me bring you up full screen. There
Yeah.
we go.
Yeah. So this is the inside. So they place the pearl out here in the rim, and that would make a kind of like orange, oh sorry, a purple pearl, and then more blue and more green and then dark. So yeah, all
Very
kinds
cool.
of pearls.
Yeah, awesome. Let me get our quiz full screen again. There we go. Okay, next question. I think we've got 2 more to go. 1 more true and false and 1 more short answer. Dr. Eagle still in the lead. Smaller fish are usually found where on the reef? Are they in the open water? Are they high above the coral? Are they closer to the coral? Or are they only in caves around the coral? So where are we going to find those smaller fish? In the open water, higher above the coral, close to the coral, or only in little caves or crevices? Oh, good job, crew. Definitely closer to the coral. It's safer there than being out in the open water. Dynamic cheetah in the lead. Last question, true or false, coming your way. Lots of reef sharks mean that the reef is unhealthy. Is that true or is that false? Lots of sharks mean the reef is unhealthy. Halfway there, let's get those answers in, and then we'll take a look at our final leaderboard, and we'll squeeze in a few more questions with Maria. All right, good job, crew. The more sharks there are, that is a sign of a healthy reef. Let's take a look at our podium. In 3rd place, we've got the Excited Dragon. In 2nd, we've got the Royal Yak. And in our top spot, what have we got? The Dynamic Cheetah in that top spot. So if you are in the classroom, Dynamic Cheetah, you need your teacher to send me a message to classroom@darwin200.com. So Dynamic Cheetah, the teacher needs to send me a message, classroom@darwin200.com. All right, let's come back from that screen share. Let's squeeze in a few more questions. And yeah, we'll go from there. There we go. All right. Good round of Kahoot, Maria. Let's get some questions here. If you're tuning in online, I know there's lots of people online. Mrs. Foster's class in Alabama is saying that they won. So I will send a message to Mrs. Foster's crew. In fact, let's bring them in. Good job, Mrs. Foster's class.
Yeah, nice. Congratulations.
Let's snag another question from you while we've got you.
Okay, where is your favorite place to dive?
Oh, good question. I like to dive in caves, actually. And like Joe was just saying when we started, I'm going to Indonesia in a couple of weeks where we will be diving inside a mountain underground, inside a cave that's full of water. And I love this because inside caves, you can find so much stuff. This cave is made out of a coral reef. It's actually a fossil, so it's an ancient coral reef. And in there, we're going to find so much cool stuff that I can't wait to share with you later on.
All right, good stuff. Let's bring Mrs. Skaggs' crew in again and see if they have another question for us. If you're tuning in online, don't be afraid to use the chat sidebar as well.
Go ahead.
Why did you choose to be a diver?
I don't think that she hears you.
Why did you choose to be a diver?
Why did I choose to be a diver? Because I think it's a really nice way of living. I get to go in the ocean and explore that, but also work with people around my passion. So I absolutely love diving. So when I can show somebody how amazing it is and they can understand how important the ocean is, I can send them home as ambassadors for the ocean. So this made me work with it. I simply couldn't do anything but this, I think.
Very cool. All right, Phoenix School, you got another question on deck for us? There they are. Oh, yep, definitely some hands there.
Hello, my name is Satva. I'm in 7th grade, and my question was, what's like the most exotic fish you've seen in your whole experience diving?
Good question. I love that. The most exotic fish. Okay, so there's a fish called a frogfish. And the frogfish doesn't swim, he's got legs. So he walks around on the coral reef and he's got this thing sitting up like an antler, like a little fishing thing sitting up at the top of his head. So you see him walking around on the reef with this big mouth and this antler. He looks so strange. I think that's one of my coolest, most favorite fish. And he comes in all different colors. And when he's a baby, he got this little kind of nail polish, it looks like, on his feet. So he sit there with yellow feet, black and dots all over, angler and legs. Just weird, but amazing.
Very cool. I've got a question online from a class in Hamilton, and they would like to know, can you suggest volunteer jobs for people interested in the ocean?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I work with dive centers all over the world, and many dive centers are now actually making these programs where you can come and volunteer to work on a coral reef or study the turtles. It is a good thing to be a diver first if you want to go this path, but there's even places where you can learn to dive. I know you have more places out in America and in South America where you can volunteer and learn to dive at the same time, but then they cost some money. But locally, there will be dive clubs that might have local projects with the ocean. I know here in Denmark, we are planting eelgrass, and that's a lot of volunteering. So there's always passionate people that need extra hands. And it's a cool community to be in because these people want to change the world and they actually do it. So yes, go and volunteer, go online, ask your mom and dad what's around.
All right. Well, Maria, I'm so glad we're able to catch up. You joined us a few times in the summer, so I can send some links to classrooms if they want to see some of the events where you were on board the ship, including one where I know you were feeling very seasick, but you hit it very well.
I was about to say.
You did very well.
I'm very green in my face on that one. Maybe not the best one to share. I felt so sick.
Well, we are definitely going to have you come join us again because I know that there's still lots of questions about corals, and your cave diving should be pretty incredible. So we want to share that story too. But for now, we're going to say goodbye because we have a few more things to squeeze in before we wrap up today. But it was such a pleasure to have you with us. And I cannot wait to follow your adventures in Indonesia.
Thank you so much for having me. It was incredible. And I love your Kahoot names. That's awesome, guys. Thank you very much. Take care.
All right. Thanks, Maria. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.
All right. Well, we cannot have a world's most exciting classroom event without talking to some of the DARWIN200 crew on board of the Oosterschelde. So right now they're across the international date line, which means that they are sleeping. So in fact, let me double check the time right here and see what time it is where they are. It is, it's 1:45 in the morning. So they're sleeping right now. But I connected with Grant and Tom yesterday and we filmed a video together from the ship. So let's take a look and see what they've been up to on board. Great, I've got Grant and Tom joining us live from the ship. Guys, making your way towards Fiji. How's it going?
Hi, everybody. Hello.
All right. Well, it's great to have you with us. Before we get kind of too much into the journey so far, I want to go back in time a little bit because the ship was just in Tonga. It was a short kind of visit, passengers off, passengers back on. So yeah, I'd like to cover a little bit of what you guys got up to while you were there. How's that sound?
Yeah, no worries.
Great.
Of course.
Okay. Well, Grant, I know you love the birds, but I'm a diver myself, so I want to start with the underwater stuff. So Tom, you had just what looks like an incredible time with the humpback whales. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Then we'll play a little clip.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, the first stop we made once we got to Tonga was into the islands of Babau, and we were super lucky that one of the tour operators had a spare day, so we managed to jump out on one of their boats to go and swim with the humpbacks. We spent the best part of the morning actually trying to look for them and trying to find a suitable pair of humpbacks. And then I think it was just after lunch we came across a mother and a calf, and they were staying around being quite calm, so we managed to jump in with them, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, and were you using tanks or were you just snorkeling?
We were just snorkeling actually on the surface. So it's one of the Tongan laws, I believe, that you're actually not allowed to dive down with them unless you've got permits and stuff. So as a way to like reduce the stress on the whales.
Okay. Well, Tom, I'm going to play the video because it's a great video. And then we can talk a little bit about the video. So I'm just going to cue it up here on my end. And here we go. All right, so I am painfully jealous over here. There's a few things I like more than to get in the water with humpback. So, I mean, the music, the singing in the background, was that, could you feel that reverberating through your body? Was that going on there?
You could hear them, but no, I actually cheated a bit in those videos and added some audio after the fact. But yeah, once they were close, I mean, even when they actually swam away, you could still, if you ducked your ear into the water, you could hear the mother and the calf communicating with each other, which is pretty special. Like it wasn't quite as loud as you hear in that video, but yeah, no, definitely could hear them, which is yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And I have one more little clip here that Grant sent me. Let me cue it up here quickly. There it is. It's just a little short one. What are we looking at here?
Yeah. So we got a chance to do a little bit of snorkeling. I also love getting in the water. But an animal called a crinoid. They almost look like plants, but you find them, they grow right onto sort of coral rock and everything under the water. But these guys, even though they look like plants and they look a little mysterious, they're actually related to things like starfish and sea cucumbers. And they're super cool because they used to be one of the dominant reef building organisms throughout the last 500 million years. And it wasn't until there was a big mass extinction event that they were kind of wiped out, and corals really came in and filled in the role that these guys have. And so there's a couple places in the world where you can still see crinoids. Mostly they're kind of deep ocean animals now, but there's a few that live in the South Pacific, and I thought it was cool that we saw one of them.
Yeah, that's great. And Tom, I guess this question would be for both of you. Now that you've left Tonga, are the whales still around, or has it been pretty quiet?
We saw a few.
Yeah, once we left, and we were still in around Tonga, there was still a few saying goodbye and stuff like that, but we haven't had any for a while yet.
Yeah, it's been a little quieter since leaving Tonga.
All right. Well, Grant, let's switch gears because I do like birds as well. So let's talk about what you saw on the islands. I am going to share my screen here. Oops, I don't want to do video. And then, we'll take a little look at what you saw. So, okay, let's go.
Yeah, so luckily we had some great chances to get on land in Tonga. First, I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of the geography of Tonga. So Tonga, it's kind of like two island chains. There's two really big islands in the north and the south, and then a lot of smaller islands in the middle. And so on the right hand side, like on the same plane where the big islands are, these are old like uplifted limestone islands. And geologically, they formed very differently than the small islands that are on the left part of the screen here. So the islands that are on the left, those are all active volcanoes, and they form this part of like active volcanic ridge that goes all the way down the edge of the Pacific plate, and it continues all the way down to New Zealand. So actually, if you just keep going like almost directly south, you get to some of the volcanoes that are in New Zealand. So it's pretty cool. And so sailing through this chain, although most of our work on land was on these older like uplifted limestone islands, we sailed by some of the active volcanoes. And if anybody heard about the Tongan volcano that erupted in 2022, that's where this was. It was on this chain of little volcanic islands. So on here, these two volcanoes here, they're really like just two different tips of the same volcano that come above the water. On the right here, there's a stratovolcano called Cow. And on the left, it's an island called Tofua. And Tofua is, it's what's left of an old like huge volcano. And it's just a huge crater. And on the inside of the crater, there's like vents, and there's a little bit of a partial lake there. But then I think we've got other photos where we show different views. So this is a closer view of Cow. It's just like a perfect volcanic cone coming right out of the ocean. And there's forests all over the side of the slopes here. And then if we go farther, so this is Tofua from above. It's this crazy, like interesting looking island. And like I mentioned, it's forested cliffs on all sides, like really stiff, or really steep, but they have this crater lake and then several active cones. And these cones were still like, they were producing fumes as we were going by them. So we could see the sulfur dioxide clouds coming out of the volcano. And I just thought it was really cool and worth pointing out, because I think these are the only active volcanoes that we're going to see from the ship during the entire 2 years. And so I also like geology. And so I think it was an interesting thing to point out to everybody.
All right, so I'm going to pause the video there, and I am going to play it at the very end of the event, but I do know that we're probably getting to the time that some classrooms are going to have to duck out, so I want to make sure that I give you the experiment for the week before classrooms have to go, and then I will play the final part of the video where Grant talks a little bit about the birds in Tonga, and then we get to see the ship for a minute at the end. But part of the world's most exciting classroom is our experiment of the week. So we have an experiment. Usually the parts are easy to find. And then you have 2 weeks to try that experiment in your classroom, or maybe try the experiment at home, and then send us in some pictures of your class, or maybe with your family trying the experiment. And then we pick 3 groups, 3 classes or students who sent us pictures, and we send them a gift card as well. So this week's experiment is from the Darwin studio in the UK with our expedition leader, Stuart. So let's take a look at the experiment, and then we'll play the rest of Grant's video to wrap up today. So here we go. Let's look at the experiment for this week.
Have you ever seen beautiful polished stones that can be as colourful and pretty as gemstones? Have you ever wondered how people get them so smooth and shiny? Well, in today's experiment, we're going to make our very own polished stones. You can even use semi-precious rocks and make real gemstones. To do this, you need your very own tumbler. These are available online, they're not expensive and they're easy to obtain. A tumbler is basically a small barrel-like container that's rotated by an electric motor. If you put stones inside, they'll be tumbled and jumbled together, slowly knocking off all of the angular edges and corners, making increasingly smooth pebbles. And if you put in different polishing agents, they'll become more and more smooth and eventually beautiful and glossy and shiny. It's really fun to produce your very own polished stones, and you can do this at home or at school. All you need in addition to your tumbler There's a small number of stones that you're going to polish. The more brightly coloured and varied in texture and coloration, the better. Some polishing grit. There are many different types of grit available. It's best to use a coarse grit to start with. This will break down those hard, rough edges of your stones. And then use progressively finer grits for a few days each to really smooth and eventually polish your stones. If you want a really glossy, really beautiful gemstone-like texture, you could even get special polishing foam such as this. And I'm going to use this to try and make the most beautiful stones I possibly can. The last thing you then need is just a small amount of water, because the stones need to be in water for the polishing grit to really work. So take off the drum of your tumbler. You can put in your stones. I've selected a number of different stones representing different minerals and semi-precious gemstones. I've got a piece of jasper, I've got different tiger eyes here, I've got some calcite, and I've got some labradorite. Labradorite's famous for a beautiful iridescent shine, so it'll be really interesting to see if that works. Make sure you don't fill the drum of the tumbler more than halfway with the stones. Then add some water. Submerge the stones properly so the drum is more than half full. And then add the grit that you want to use. And depending which stage you're on the process determines which type of grit. Because this is starting with really rough stones, I have to start with really coarse grit. So pour that in. You're then ready to seal your tumbler's drum. In this one, there's a metal disc with a rubber edge. Make sure to put that in tightly so no water can escape. Then it has this metal disc on top. You can unseal that with this screw thread top. Let's seal that nice and tight so nothing can come out. Then you're ready to put the drum on the tumbler. You can then choose how many days you want to tumble it for. I'm going to start off with 6 with that coarse grit. Then I'm going to move down to 3 days with a finer grit, 2 days with an even finer grit, then lastly another 2 days with a super fine grit. Then to top it off, I'll use this polishing foam to hopefully give my stones a really beautiful glossy finish. So let's get it started. I'll leave this going. Join me in 2 weeks' time to find out how my stones have turned out. Good luck in tumbling your very own beautiful polished rocks.
All right. So I did a little research online and I did find some tumblers on Amazon. There's some cool National Geographic ones. They're about $60. Some of the classrooms out there might have some in their schools and their science labs, or some of students might even have them at home. Some of you might have some polished rocks. So maybe you don't have a tumbler, but you have some polished rocks. You might want to send us some pictures of some polished rocks you might have at your home. So classroom@darwin200.com. If you can try the rock tumbler and polish some rocks in the classroom or at home, send us some pictures. If you have some polished rocks already at home, maybe you have a rock tumbler, maybe you got some at a museum, send us pictures as well, and we'll select some students for a prize with our experiment. So 2 weeks to try the experiment, or share with us some polished rocks that maybe you got some from some museums or something like that. We also have every week a curiosity of the week. So a new question, something for you to solve from the natural world, and send us your answer to what you think it is. So let's take a look at this week's curiosity.
This week's curiosity is this strange object here. Can you guess its identity? It's actually been cut into bookends to hold books between, but that doesn't detract from what it is. You have to look very closely. I'll give you a few clues. It's very heavy. If you look very carefully, it has an intricate pattern both on this side and there as well. The two sides are very different. It's reminiscent of something very familiar that I guarantee you've seen and touched before. Can you guess what it is? Send in your answer to classroom@darwin200.com for a chance to win a £50 Amazon gift voucher prize. Join me in 1 week's time and we'll find out the answer to this curiosity of the week. Good luck and thank you for taking part.
All right, so that brings us to exactly 1 hour of the world's most exciting classroom. It's been pretty jam-packed. We had Maria with us. We had Tom and Grant share from the ship. We had our experiment, our Kahoot, and wrapped up with our curiosity of the week. So to recap, you have 2 weeks to try the experiment, or maybe you have some polished stones at home already. You can send us some pictures of to classroom@darwin200.com. You have 1 week to think about the curiosity of the week. What do you think it was? Do a little bit of research and send us your answer, and we will have that answer for you next week along with another curiosity. So a little bit of homework from the world's most exciting classroom. I will say goodbye to the classrooms who have to sign out now. We can't wait to see you next week, where hopefully we'll be doing something live from Fiji with the ship, which should be pretty cool. And for those who can stick around, I'm going to play the last couple minutes of Grant and Tom from the Oosterschelde, and we'll see some of the kind of endemic, hard to find bird species that Grant managed to find.
And so on some of these older limestone islands, there are quite a lot of interesting birds. And I was able to get photos of most of the endemic birds, or most of the native birds that are on Tonga. So this is a beautiful Pacific kingfisher here. And I think we've got another one of the kingfisher. They're really nice. Unlike kingfishers that you might have in North America or in Europe, these guys, they're not really going after fish. They're more often eating insects and small lizards that they find in the forest and in open areas. And then this was maybe one of the most exciting birds that we saw. So this is a female Tongan whistler. This is the only bird that we were likely to see that is a bird that is only found in Tonga. And basically they're only found in this one little island group in Tonga, the Vava'u group where we were. And so this is a female whistler here. And then the male has this really bold black and yellow pattern here. And this is a picture of a male singing. And I thought it was worth pointing out that I was able to get recordings of their song. And this is a bird that, you know, they're not seen very often by ornithologists. There are very few records online of them, and there are even fewer song specimens of these guys. And so I took an acoustic specimen, and Joe's going to play a sample of the song for you.
All right. Hopefully this comes through nice and clear.
So it sounds almost like it's a whistler. So they whistle. And it really is a sound that just kind of goes right through you, but it was really amazing. And it almost sounds like an anthropogenic, like a squeaky gate or something. But it was a really, really cool sound. And this is the graph that was produced as I was doing the recording. This is a graph called a spectrogram. And this is just a way of visualizing sound. And you can actually use this in order to sort of differentiate the calls of different birds. And so just like photos assist with being a record and helping with ID for a bird observation, the spectrograms help as well. And that helps ornithologists to be able to verify observations when people say that they've seen it or heard a certain bird. This here is a really attractive bird, but it's an introduced bird called a bulbul. They're insect eaters as well. They're from the Indian subcontinent, but they're another bird that's pretty widely distributed across the Pacific. And then we've got this guy. This is a Polynesian triller. These guys are also really widespread. So we'll get them in Fiji. They're in Vanuatu and New Caledonia as well. And then as we get closer to Australia, we get other species of trillers there. They're very, very noisy birds. And then this guy, I finally got a good picture of an imperial pigeon. This is the Pacific imperial pigeon. They're widespread all the way from Papua New Guinea, all the way to Tonga, or all the way to Rarotonga, actually. And finally, I had one that stood still. It stood still, and it waited long enough for me to get a photo of one. This guy is a Polynesian starling. So this is the native starling that's present in Tonga and Fiji. And they're super cool. They were very adaptable, and like they're found in all around towns. And what's interesting is that in Tonga, we didn't have the introduced starling, the common myna. That is the bird that I've shown before. They have yellow markings on their face, and they're one of the most common species that you see around cities and towns in the South Pacific. But they're from India. So this myna, it's not been introduced on this island in Tonga. And I think because of that, we were seeing the native starling filling in that role, and it was all around the towns and the ports, which was kind of encouraging, like seeing a native bird that was coexisting with people. And then finally, not birds, but we've got some fruit bats here. So these guys, these are I believe it's the insular flying fox is the common name for them. But these are just the group of bats that they've spread their way right across the Pacific. We didn't see any in Tonga. We were looking out for them, but in Tonga, there were a few trees where during the day you would see them roosting, and then at night they would all fly out, and they're large bats. They probably have wingspans about 2.5 feet or so. And actually, if it's possible to zoom in on this photo, this is a mother bat, the one that's super visible here on the left. And it's got a younger bat here that's on the belly. So you can see there's a little bit of like the stretch skin that is in between the tail and the legs there, right above her head. And then you can see the little bit of brown fur under her wing that would be on the young guy's head there.
All right. Very cool. Let me get my camera back on here. We can take the pictures down. All right. Good stuff. Well, I can't wait till you guys get to Sydney. You'll have the flying foxes right in the harbor, and they're pretty impressive to see, especially during the day. Huge groups of them. Then at night when they kind of fill the sky around the harbor. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Well, before we let you guys go, you're making your way towards Fiji. I know that it'll be a short stop there as well, but I think we're going to have some Darwin leaders after the ship leaves. What's your plans for Fiji? Back on land, looking for some birds?
Yeah, so I'm actually planning on hopping off in Fiji, and I'm going to continue working on this side project that I've been doing with a documentary film. So I'm hoping to do some filming of some of the cool endemic birds that are in Fiji, and hopefully get some cool clips to show everybody what we're able to see there. But Tom is sailing on.
You're sailing on, Tom?
I'm sailing on from Fiji to New Zealand, but I think we're actually arriving into Fiji tomorrow afternoon, I believe.
So we're making a stop on the second largest island in Fiji. It's Vanuatu, and we're hoping to stop in the port town of Savusavu there. It's a small kind of, I was there when I was working in Fiji in 2022. It's a nice looking town. It's very kind of old worldy. It's not very industrial like a lot of the ports we've seen in Tonga. And so it should be a nice change. There's a lot of forest around. There's some nice undisturbed beaches, some cool reefs.
Yeah, great. Well, Tom, maybe you'll get a chance to get in the water with some good sharks in Fiji, maybe some bull sharks or tiger sharks. That'd be pretty cool.
We'll try.
All right. Very cool.
Also trying to plan on doing continuing our coral transect survey.
Oh, excellent.
Get some of that in some of the coral reefs in Fiji.
Perfect. Well, Maria will be our guest tomorrow when we're live. So we're going to catch up together on her experiences and the transects you guys were doing down there, which awesome. We'll share the videos again. Some of those reefs were just spectacular.
Yeah, super special places.
Awesome. Well, guys, maybe before we let you go, because here in Canada, US, Europe, the weather is going kind of fall. It's getting cooler. Temperatures are dropping. So can we get a little pan around? Can we soak up some of that sun before we let you guys go?
Stand up. I mean, the last few days it's been pretty rainy actually, but now the sun has come out, which is very welcome. Then
beautiful.
And Lucas over there.
There was an island.
Yeah, can't see anymore. No. There you go.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much. We'll catch up again, hopefully next week. But thanks for taking a little bit of time. When we go live, you guys will probably be having a good night's rest there on the other side of the international date line.
We can hope.
All right. Thanks so much, guys.
See you later, Joe.
See you, everybody.
All right. Always grateful for a little connection from the Oosterschelde. Usually we try and do it live, but with the part of the world that they're in on the other side of the international date line, they are in the future. So it's actually September 13th for them, and it is around 2 o'clock in the morning. So glad that we could have Tom and Grant do that video for us. The last thing we need to do today is just a shout out to our sponsors, our partners, our supporters, without whom we wouldn't be sailing towards Fiji right now. We wouldn't have the world's most exciting classroom, young Darwin leaders on board to gain new conservation skills, and people like Maria wouldn't be doing incredible research in different places around the world. So a big shout out to the classrooms for able to stick around for a few more minutes to catch the last little bit of our video with Grant and Tom. For now, though, we're going to sign out. We hope to see you next week, hopefully live from Fiji, and we will catch up with some new guest speakers. So thanks for being here today, and we are going to sign off after our thank you to our sponsors.